I need to begin with a truth that might feel like a slap to the soul. You don't struggle with money because the world is unfair. You struggle because, without noticing, you've been repeating a quiet spell that blocks prosperity before it can even reach your hands. And the most frightening part is that this spell doesn't come from banks, crises, or enemies. It comes from your own mouth. The simplest sentence, the one you say without thinking, can either open the gates of abundance or seal them shut. That's why I have to warn you now. Every word you speak about your financial life becomes a command the universe obeys, whether you're conscious of it or not. When I first understood this, it wasn't through a book or a lecture. It hit me like a tremor running under my feet. I realized that for years I had been declaring lack even when I thought I was being humble. I would say things like, "I'm fine, I'm managing, it's enough for now." And I had no idea that these tiny sentences were quietly sculpting the limits of my reality. So let me make a promise and a risk at the same time. If you keep repeating the wrong phrase, your financial life will freeze. But if you shift just a handful of words, effortless prosperity becomes not just possible, but inevitable. This isn't superstition, not in the way people think. In Jewish wisdom, words are not sounds, they are forces. They are the architecture of destiny. And once you see how this works, you'll never again speak carelessly about your own life. Let me guide you into this, slowly, intentionally, because what I'm about to explain has shaped generations before us. But before we go deeper, I want you to take a single step with me. Go to the comments and write one sentence you often say about money. Maybe money is difficult, maybe I never have enough. Maybe something softer like, I'll survive somehow. Whatever it is, write it down, not for me, for you. The moment you see your phrase outside of your mind, you'll understand the weight it carries. A public comment becomes a mirror, and when you look into it honestly, the transformation begins long before the new words arrive. Now breathe for a moment. Notice how your body reacts to the idea that your words may have been shaping your financial reality more dramatically than you ever imagined. There's a slight tension in the chest, a flutter of unease. But underneath it, something else awakens. Curiosity. Because if a simple phrase can limit you, then another simple phrase can free you. And that realization is the doorway. Let me begin to open it. Let me show you why these small sentences hold such tremendous power, and why ancient wisdom has guarded this secret with reverence for centuries. There is a moment, usually quiet and almost invisible, when a person begins to understand that prosperity is not a matter of luck, strategy, or even hard work. It is a matter of language, and not language in the poetic sense, but in the spiritual, foundational, creation-level sense. In Jewish wisdom, words are not decorations. They are forces, currents, and seeds. Every sentence is a seed planted in the soil of your future, and eventually, you must harvest whatever that seed becomes. This is why the sages say that the world was spoken into existence, to show us that speaking is not describing reality, it is shaping it. I grew up hearing that words have weight, but I never fully understood it until I watched an elder in my family lose everything in 72 hours because of a phrase he repeated without noticing. He would say, "I'm satisfied, I don't need more." He believed he was being humble. He believed he was showing gratitude. But spiritually, those words were a declaration of completion, a signal that he was full and that nothing more should come. And life, obedient as always, withdrew its gifts. That story has lived in my bones ever since, and even today, when I close my eyes, I can still sense the shift in the air during those days, like the universe quietly stepping back. That is why I am telling you now. The struggle with money never begins with money. It begins with the statements you make about it. Some people repeat, "I'm fine," as if it's harmless, but the universe hears it as a final line in a contract. Others cling to, "I'm surviving," and fate takes them at their word, giving them only enough to survive, never enough to expand. And then there are those who speak differently, who say, "Thank God I'm growing. Opportunity is opening. I'm developing myself." They aren't bragging. They are aligning. And their lives move forward because their words walk ahead of them, clearing the path. This is the point where a sharp contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Two people can live the same life, earn the same amount, wake up in the same city, yet one prospers and the other stays stuck. The difference is rarely intelligence or effort. Often, it is simply the hidden script they repeat without even hearing themselves. The ones who prosper speak like builders. The ones who stagnate speak like survivors. And this contrast is so subtle that, unless someone teaches you to listen for it, you never realize the power you're giving away. But there's something even more intriguing. There are 3 specific verbal mistakes that block prosperity more than any others. 3 phrases that look harmless but operate like spiritual locks no one warns you about. And the strange part? The second one is the most dangerous, because it masquerades as confidence when in truth it quietly dismantles your growth from the inside. The first mistake is deceptively small, almost polite. The kind of phrase you slip into a conversation without thinking, yet it operates like a quiet curse. The mistake is saying, "It's fine," or "I'm okay," when deep down you know you're not. At first glance, it seems harmless, even mature. But spiritually, this phrase shuts the door to abundance with the firmness of a lock clicking into place. When you declare that everything is fine, you are telling the universe you have reached completion, that nothing more is needed, nothing more should arrive. You unintentionally announce that your cup is full even when you're thirsty. And the universe, obedient and literal, responds by withholding the very opportunities you wish would come. The truth is that most people don't say "I'm fine" to express true contentment. They say it to avoid vulnerability, avoid explanation, avoid examining the parts of their lives that ache. They say it because it's easier to pretend than to confront the emptiness. But words don't care about intention, they care about direction. And "I'm fine" points toward stagnation. It roots you in place. It tells the energetic field around you to stop delivering, stop unfolding, stop expanding. I once watched this unfold in the life of an old neighbor, a hard-working man who believed that complaining was dishonorable. Whenever asked how he was doing, he would answer, "Everything's fine, thank God," even when his business was slowly shrinking. He thought he was being noble. He thought humility meant pretending he needed nothing. But within 3 days of repeating that phrase during a particularly difficult week, he lost 2 major clients, his delivery van broke down, and a contract he'd been waiting months for simply evaporated. To him, it felt like a streak of bad luck. To me, it looked like the natural consequence of words that told life to stop supporting him. The universe listens faster than we realize. It responds to the tone behind our sentences, the posture of our language. When we say "I'm fine," it hears halt. When we say "I'm okay with what I have," it hears no more. And within a short time, sometimes 3 days, sometimes 3 weeks, the flow of abundance narrows until it becomes nothing more than a thin trickle. We blame circumstances, the economy, or fate, but the truth is far quieter. We sealed our own gate. And so this first mistake becomes the invisible engine of suffering. Not dramatic suffering, the slow kind. The kind that makes you wonder why every month feels the same, why your progress is always slight, why breakthroughs never fully break through. It is the suffering of self-limitation disguised as modesty. But this is only the beginning. If the first mistake is subtle, the next one is far more treacherous. It doesn't sound like humility. It doesn't sound like fear. It sounds like confidence. And that is why it destroys growth faster than anything else. There is an ancient teaching in the Talmud that says a person must be careful when speaking of fullness, for the one who declares himself full cannot receive more. At first it sounds metaphorical, almost poetic, but it is far more literal than people imagine. In Jewish thought, fullness is not about how much you possess. It is about whether you leave room for the divine flow to continue. The moment you claim you already have enough, the spiritual mechanism that pours blessings into your life slows, then pauses, then quietly closes. Not as punishment, but as simple alignment. A full vessel cannot be filled. A closed door cannot be opened. This is where the psychology behind spirituality becomes impossible to ignore. The brain and the soul are not separate operators. They mirror each other. When you speak a sentence of completion, the brain relaxes into inaction, assuming there is nothing left to pursue, and the soul, hearing the same message, stops drawing opportunities toward you. What begins as a phrase becomes a posture. What begins as a posture becomes a reality. Think of it visually. Imagine filling a glass with water until it reaches the rim. Once the water touches the very edge, not a single additional drop can enter without overflowing. And so the pouring stops. In life, the same principle applies, emotionally, financially, spiritually. If you say, "I'm fine," or "I'm doing okay," or even "it's enough," you create a rim around your existence, an invisible limit that abundance will not cross. Not because abundance lacks power, but because you declared yourself full. The tragedy is that most people live with a cup that is half empty, yet they speak as though it were overflowing. They force themselves into emotional silence, believing it's the noble thing to do. They pretend their struggles are manageable because they fear being seen as needy or ambitious or dissatisfied. But pretending to be full doesn't make you grateful. It makes you blocked. Gratitude is honest. Completion is artificial. The universe can work with gratitude. It cannot work with false completion. So let me ask you gently but directly, where in your life are you speaking fullness while experiencing emptiness? Where are you saying, "I'm fine," when you are exhausted? Where are you saying, "I don't need more," when your dreams whisper the opposite? Where are you declaring completion while secretly craving expansion? These are not small questions. They are the doorway into the truth you've avoided, the truth that can restore the flow of prosperity into your life. Close your eyes for a moment and scan your life. There is at least one area where you shrink yourself with a sentence. Maybe it's your career, maybe your finances, maybe your confidence, maybe your relationships. Identify it. Feel the discomfort rise. That discomfort is honesty waking up, and honesty is the one force that can dissolve the invisible ceiling you've placed above your blessings. Because as you're about to see, the second mistake doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from believing you've already won, and that belief, more than any other, has destroyed more growth than failure ever could. The second mistake is far more seductive than the first, because it doesn't sound like modesty. It sounds like victory. It sounds like progress. It sounds like the kind of confidence people applaud. The mistake is lowering your guard the moment something begins to go right. It's the quiet belief that you've already won. You land a new client, solve a temporary financial problem, or finally feel a bit of relief, and suddenly you breathe out too deeply. You loosen the grip. You tell yourself the worst has passed. And in that exact moment, you stop moving. You stop growing. You stop expanding the space where abundance can flow. This is when life delivers one of its harshest lessons. Momentum is sacred. The universe rewards movement, not relaxation. Rest is important, of course, but declaring victory too early invites stagnation. It's like a river that slows until it becomes a pond, still, quiet, and eventually stagnant. What once flowed with possibility becomes heavy. And the moment you lower your guard, life mirrors your posture. Opportunities drift. Energy softens. Passion fades. There's a saying I heard growing up, half joke, half warning. A sleeping alligator becomes a handbag. It paints an absurd picture, yet it holds a truth most people never grasp. Anything that stops moving becomes vulnerable. Anything that believes it is safe becomes at risk. Anything that assumes tomorrow will take care of itself begins to decay today. And so many people unconsciously choose this decay the instant they feel a little better. Psychologically, the explanation is simple. The brain loves certainty. The moment it senses relief, it downshifts into conservation mode. It tells the body, "We are safe. Stop pushing, stop striving, stop stretching." But spirituality follows a different logic. Growth requires expansion, and expansion requires motion. The minute you stop expanding, you stop aligning with the energetic flow that brings prosperity. This creates a silent contradiction inside you, a spiritual forward pull fighting against a psychological backward lean. And that contradiction manifests as confusion. One week you feel unstoppable. The next everything slows down. One month you're rising. The next, it's as if the universe forgot you exist. But the universe didn't forget. You stepped back. You stepped out of movement. You stepped into stillness disguised as confidence. People often mistake this for bad luck. I don't know what happened, they say. I was doing so well. But something did happen. You paused. You mistook progress for arrival. You thought the climb was over when it had barely begun, and life, always responsive, adjusted its pace to match yours. But here is the deeper tragedy. Most people don't realize this mistake until everything slows to a crawl. They don't see the moment they stopped expanding. They don't hear the subtle click of momentum slipping away. They only feel the consequences. And yet, this is not the worst of the three mistakes. There is one more, the most treacherous of all, because it hides beneath a phrase everyone uses, a phrase that seems innocent, even comforting, but spiritually, it is a lie that suffocates growth before it can even breathe. Request timed out. The third mistake is the most dangerous because it doesn't sound like confidence or humility. It sounds like comfort. It sounds like a soft blanket you pull over yourself when life feels cold. The mistake is repeating a lie so common, so socially accepted, that almost no one notices its poison. Saying everything is fine. Not the polite version you say to avoid conversation, but the deeper one, the internal one, the whispered sentence you use to convince yourself there's no need to change, no need to stretch, no need to grow. This lie is lethal because it doesn't shock your system. It numbs it. And numbness is far more destructive than fear. When you tell yourself that everything is fine, even when it isn't, you create a spiritual illusion. You build a tiny false world where no action is required, no transformation is urgent, no evolution is necessary. And inside that illusion, your soul suffocates. Not dramatically, quietly. A little each day. Your ambition softens. Your intuition dims. Your hunger for expansion turns into a dull ache you learn to ignore. All because you repeated a sentence that pretends life is motionless when life is, by nature, movement. Here is the truth people resist most. Nothing is ever fully fine. There is always a corner of your life that can rise higher. There is always a muscle that can strengthen, a skill that can deepen, a blessing that can multiply. To say, everything is fine, is to deny the universe the opportunity to continue shaping you. It's like closing the shutters in the middle of the afternoon and wondering why the sunlight can't warm your home. There is, interestingly, scientific evidence for this. A study conducted by Israeli behavioral researchers showed that individuals who repeatedly used neutralizing phrases such as "it's fine," "it's whatever," or "I'm okay with how things are," experienced an average 12% drop in income over the following months. 12%, almost 1/8 of their earning power, dissolved simply because their language signaled to the brain and to the world that they were no longer pursuing expansion. When the mind hears neutrality, it switches into maintenance mode, and a life lived in maintenance mode slowly erodes. But here is where the tone shifts, because the very fact that words can limit you means that words can also liberate you. If a simple phrase can shrink your world, another simple phrase can open it. If your language can suffocate growth, it can also resurrect it. You are not trapped in these mistakes. You are simply unaware of the scripts you've been reciting. And awareness is the key that unlocks the next door. Because now that you've seen the three errors, the quiet constraint of "I'm fine," the premature victory of lowered guard, and the numbing lie of "everything is fine," you are ready for the turning point. You are ready for the formula that transforms prosperity from a struggle into a natural consequence. Now that the illusions have been stripped away, something shifts in the air, a subtle readiness, a quiet hunger for the sentence that reverses the three mistakes and reopens the flow of effortless prosperity. I feel it in you now, that tension between fear and anticipation, the sense that a door is about to unlock. And it is. Because after exposing the words that silently sabotage your abundance, it's time to reveal the simple formula that restores movement, gratitude, and expansion. The formula is not mystical, not complicated and not elitist. It's a doorway anyone can walk through, and it consists of only 3 parts woven into a single sentence. Thank God, I am working and developing myself. At first, it may seem too simple, too soft, too ordinary to hold real power, but that is precisely why it works. Prosperity does not respond to elaborate theories. It responds to alignment. Alignment with gratitude, alignment with action, alignment with growth. The sentence contains all 3. Thank God roots you in appreciation, signaling that you recognize the blessings already present. Appreciation opens the gates for more. I am working aligns you with movement, the opposite of stagnation. It tells the universe you are in motion, and motion attracts opportunity. And developing myself places you in the posture of expansion, the spiritual stance of someone who is never full, never finished, never closed to evolution. Each part of this sentence counteracts one of the 3 mistakes. Gratitude replaces the lie of false completion. Action replaces the danger of lowered guard. Growth replaces the illusion of everything is fine. When spoken together, the sentence becomes more than a phrase. It becomes a declaration of open doors. But let me break it down slowly so you can feel its texture. Thank God is not about religion. It is about humility, acknowledgement, and anchoring your energy in abundance rather than scarcity. When you begin with gratitude, your nervous system relaxes, your mind opens, and your spirit becomes receptive. Gratitude is the soil. I am working is the seed, the assurance that you are not passive, not waiting for miracles, not frozen in fear. The universe supports the one who moves. And developing myself is the horizon, the promise that you are growing toward something larger than your current reality. This is the posture that abundance recognizes. Now imagine repeating this phrase out loud every morning. Feel how different it is from I'm fine or I'm doing okay. It carries weight. It carries direction. It carries life. This is why I want you to set an alarm. Yes, an actual alarm, for 9 o'clock every morning, labeled with this exact sentence. When it rings, say it out loud. Let the vibration fill your chest. Let the cadence reshape your day. And let this daily activation signal to the universe that you are once again open for expansion. Because once you begin using this new language, the world around you doesn't stay the same. People shift. Opportunities appear. Doors unlock. And soon, you will start seeing the quiet evidence of transformation in the lives of others who learned this truth before you. There is a woman whose story still lingers in my memory like incense, faint, warm, and impossible to forget. Her name is Lucia, a quiet soul who lived most of her life believing that scarcity was her destiny. She wasn't lazy, nor careless, nor unlucky. She was simply trapped inside the language she repeated every single day. I get by, she would say. I manage. I don't need much. These sentences became the bars of an invisible cage. And for years she walked in circles inside it, wondering why nothing in her life ever truly changed. When she first heard about the power of language, the idea that words don't describe reality but create it, she laughed softly. Not because she doubted it, but because it frightened her to consider the possibility that she had been shaping her own limitations. But something in her shifted. A small spark. A tiny opening. The kind that appears when a person realizes they've been whispering the wrong prayers for too long. In the days that followed, she decided to test a new sentence. Thank God I am working and developing myself. At first, she felt ridiculous saying it. Her voice was thin, shaky, like someone trying to speak after years of silence. But she kept going. Morning after morning, she whispered it. Not as a ritual, but as an act of rebellion against the old script that had ruled her life. And something extraordinary happened. Not instantly, not dramatically, but steadily. Within 1 week, a neighbor offered her small paid tasks to help with. Within 2 weeks, a family friend connected her with a part-time opportunity she never would have sought on her own. Within a month, she found herself waking with more energy, more clarity, more direction. The changes were small at first, barely noticeable to anyone but her. But each change built a bridge to the next, and soon she realized she was no longer living inside the same frequency of scarcity. Before, she had moved through life with the heaviness of someone waiting for permission. Now she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who understood that movement itself is permission. The difference was not luck. It was language. It was the shift from I'm fine to I'm growing, from I get by to I expand. She had rewritten her script, and life responded like a partner eager to dance. Stories like Lucia's are not rare. They are universal echoes of a truth that crosses borders, religions, and traditions. You don't need to be Jewish to feel the energy of creation in your words. You don't need to belong to any faith to experience the shift that gratitude, action, and growth produce in your life. Human beings are creators, not by magic, but by intention. And intention begins with what we speak. Because here is the deeper revelation. Once you understand how your language shapes your world, you begin to see prosperity not as a miracle, but as a rhythm. One you can learn, embody, and sustain. And that rhythm is rooted in an ancient wisdom that has guided generations into abundance. There is a principle woven through Jewish thought so deeply that it appears in stories, prayers, teachings, and even the very structure of the sacred texts. The principle is this: words create worlds. Not metaphorically, literally. When the ancient texts say, God spoke and there was, they are not merely describing the birth of the universe, they are revealing a pattern, a blueprint, a spiritual mechanism that humans participate in every day. Every sentence you speak extends your world or shrinks it. Every declaration opens a gate or closes one. Every phrase is a seed, and the life you live is the harvest. When you look back at your own journey, you will notice patterns you once ignored. Times when you said nothing ever works for me, and suddenly everything did feel harder. Moments when you whispered, I don't know if I can, and your confidence collapsed like a tent with no poles. And other times, maybe rare, maybe fleeting, when you said I'm moving forward, and doors seemed to crack open in places you least expected. These are not coincidences. They are echoes of the ancient truth that language carries force. So now, let me bring all of this into clarity. You stand before a choice, not a dramatic one, not a mystical one, but a daily one. You can choose the language of stagnation or the language of expansion. You can choose phrases that freeze your life in place or phrases that draw abundance toward you like a magnet. You can speak as someone who survives or someone who evolves. These choices seem tiny, but in the architecture of destiny, they are pillars. And so I must tell you this plainly. Prosperity is not a reward for the lucky. It is the natural consequence of alignment. When your words, your intentions, and your actions move in the same direction, life responds. When they contradict each other, life reflects that conflict back at you. This is why the sentence, "Thank God I am working and developing myself," feels so different. It unifies gratitude, movement, and growth into one posture. It becomes a spiritual doorway through which abundance can finally enter. But understanding is not enough. Wisdom only becomes real when practiced. That is why I want you to take on a 7-day challenge. Not to impress me, not to prove anything, but to experience the truth firsthand. For 7 days, speak the new sentence every morning. For 7 days, avoid the old phrases that once blocked you. For 7 days, watch your emotional state shift, your decisions sharpen, your intuition awaken. Small changes, subtle changes, but each one a sign that your world is expanding again. And as these days unfold, you will feel a quiet momentum begin to rise beneath your life, a sense of being carried rather than dragged. This is the rhythm of prosperity, not loud, not dramatic, but steady. A rhythm rooted in divine principle, a rhythm reclaimed through language. Yet even now, as this understanding settles in, there is something more powerful waiting just beyond the edge of your awareness. Something that deepens everything we've explored so far. You've walked through illusions, truths, ancient principles, and the quiet mechanics of prosperity. Now, at the final turn, everything converges into a single understanding. Your life shifts the moment your language shifts. It's that simple, that profound, that universal. The old phrases, "I'm fine," "I get by," "everything is okay," were never harmless. They were anchors disguised as comfort. But now you carry a new sentence, one that breathes movement instead of stillness. "Thank God I am working and developing myself." This is not merely a phrase. It is a posture, a vibration, a declaration that you have stepped back into alignment with the flow of abundance. And as I bring this journey to its close, I want to seal the teaching inside you with clarity. Do not return to the language of stagnation. Do not shrink your world with phrases that pretend your spirit is full when it is actually hungry for transformation. Instead, speak the words that open doors. Speak the words that stretch your horizon. Speak the words that turn survival into growth and growth into blessing. The universe listens, and now, you know what to say. So let me offer you something sacred, not a concept, but a benediction that has carried generations toward protection, peace, and prosperity. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May He lift His countenance upon you and give you peace. Feel those words settle in your chest. They don't just comfort, they expand. They remind you that abundance is not an accident. It is a continuation of divine intention. And before you step away from this video, I want you to take one symbolic action that keeps the energy of this message alive. Share this message with 3 people who are still trapped in the old language of limitation. 3 individuals who still whisper that money is hard, who still say they're fine, who still believe the universe is withholding from them. By sharing, you do more than pass along information. You ignite a ripple. You extend the blessing. You multiply the light. Let this be your final reminder. Prosperity begins with a sentence, and now you carry the right one. You carry the language of gratitude, the rhythm of action, the energy of growth. Repeat it daily. Speak it with intention. Let it become the new foundation upon which you build the next chapter of your life. Thank God you are working and developing yourself. And because of that, the path ahead is no longer narrow. It is wide, open, and waiting for you.